It is a very humid, hot day here in the barn in Rhode Island, and I have a little job. I am repotting a few of the plants that live here. Nice thing to do on a quiet morning. And I thought I would share this with you because I recently had an online sale of some of the flower pots I made. Pots that I made at Guy Wolf's the last time I was there, white flower pots, and they all sold out. So thank you to everyone who purchased a flower pot on my website. And I wanted to show you what happens when you actually use the pots. So when you buy one of the white flower pots that I make at Guy's, it looks like this. It is a fairly white pot. It has some weathering on it, and many people take this pot and they love how it looks and they don't want to change how it looks, so they just get a plant that will fit into this, a plant that's in a plastic container, and they kind of insert it into the pot and it lives that way, sort of hidden. The plastic is hidden by the clay pot, and that's fine, but these pots are really made to be used the traditional way. They are fired, the clay is fired at a temperature that allows it to still absorb moisture, which is a functional aspect of the relationship between the plant and the pot. When the pot can absorb moisture, it means that it's going to wick away excess water from the soil when it's watered, but it's also going to hold some of that water in and give it back to the roots when the plant needs that water. Now, it's also a bad thing, because it means that when there's not enough water in the soil for the plant, the pot takes priority and wicks out the water from the soil. So a lot of people don't like using clay pots and prefer plastic pots, and that is a very legitimate reason, because it actually helps a lot of plants. It makes it easier to grow plants in certain plants in plastic, because you don't have to water them as much as you would, especially in hot weather, if they're in clay. Wow, that was a long ramble. I'll give you some quiet time. Did that all make sense? I hope it did. It made sense to me. So, there's an argument sometimes between the convenience of a plastic flower pot and the inconvenience of a clay flower pot. However, I would say that it's the reason that I would push a clay flower pot on any gardener or person that has a plant is they're so much more beautiful. And when you actually plant the plant into the pot directly and you water it and you care for it and it grows in the pot itself transforms. It stops, well, it won't stay like this. It will turn into something like this. And that is really, I think it's appealing to a lot of people, that the pot develops a patina over time that makes it look so much better with use. And the colors that appear on the pot after years and years of use, they are caused by minerals in the soil, minerals in the water, salts in both of those things, leaching out into the clay, doing different things to the pot. Additionally, if you live in a place that is conducive to growing moss, like if you put these pots on to a deck where stuff starts to have moss grown on it, the pots will start growing moss on them and they look unbelievably beautiful. So that is my argument for why someone should really plant the plant in the clay pot. If you bought one of my pots in my last sale, I encourage you to really use it, and to just embrace the pot changing over the years, because it will change. Now, today I have 3 things that I'm repotting. I am going to repot a little plant of rosemary and a begonia. These 2 were recently purchased at a garden sale. This beautiful begonia, which I kind of want to take back to New York, and an orchid. And this is an orchid that we've had here for a few years, and it bloomed. The last time it bloomed, the blooms stayed on the plant for 6 months. it bloomed like in early summer or late spring, and then the blossoms were still on the plant at Thanksgiving. It was crazy. So this orchid has done very well. It was cut back, and now there are 2 new stems that have sprouted that have buds forming, so it's going to bloom again. And this has just lived in its little plastic insert, but it's time, it's pretty root bound in there, and I'm going to put it into this orchid pot, which I also made years ago. There's a really nice collection of flower pots that I've made here over the years because I've made them in this barn, these ones. This orchid pot is from 2022. This one is from 2022 as well. So it's really nice to see and use my pots here over the years. Let's get started. I'm going to pot up the begonia first, and I'll use this pot to pot the begonia, the sort of newer pot. Now, the first thing that you should do is cover up the drainage hole. So the hole exists in the pot to allow excess water to run out of the pot so that the plant doesn't drown in moisture. And you want to cover that hole, but you want to allow it to still be able to drain. And so you don't want to put like a piece of plastic on there because that would defeat the purpose of having the hole in there. The traditional method of covering that hole is to put a shard of pottery on there, because usually the shard of pottery is slightly curved, so it will prevent soil from falling out of the bottom of the pot, but it will also allow adequate drainage. And this is why when you have the unfortunate situation of a flower pot breaking, save it, because you can use it for shards, and that's what I do. So what I do is I keep at least 1 broken pot at all times, and when I need to do something like this, I get a shard, and if the shard is big, then you can actually just break it down to size to fit over the hole. You don't want to put something huge like this in here. So what I do is I just get the shard, and then I get a little hammer, and if you tap it, it'll break, and you can break it into further and further smaller pieces. And then you just use the shard to cover that hole. Okay? Easy. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is put some potting soil into the pot, and you want to really, if possible, use soil that's mixed up for the purpose. So don't use outdoor garden soil in a pot. Get specific indoor potting soil if this is going to live indoors in a pot. And I just take my plant out carefully, and I kind of figure out, like, okay, where is it going to sit? It's going to sit there. So you want to fill it up and have some excess soil in here. Okay. Right there. And I try to center it as much as possible so that it looks nice. And then carefully put soil around the plant. I'm doing this on a drop cloth so that after I'm done, I can just take the drop cloth outside and give it a shake. Easy cleanup. I love these cotton drop cloths. They're so versatile. I've been using them for years, for everything. Okay, you want to see in these pockets around where the plant was sitting, you push your fingers in just to get rid of these major air pockets, and it will reveal that you need more soil. You don't want to plant the plant too close to the surface of the pot because it does need room for water to, like when you water it, the water needs to sit in a little lip before it absorbs into the soil. Okay, that looks pretty good. There. Beautiful begonia potted. Okay. Now, for the rosemary, I'm going to use a small pot. That one or this one? Use this one. And same thing, I'm going to get a little shard. Put this shard in the bottom. Put some soil in here. And to release the plant, sometimes you need to squeeze the plastic. If it's very root bound, it'll be adhered to the pot. So you just give the pot like a good squeeze, which usually does the trick, and then give the plant a gentle pull from a sturdy part of the stem so that you don't break it. And this really is very root bound. And okay, here's another thing. So when you repot something, you want to go up in size gradually. You don't want to put this pot in you don't want to put this plant in like a huge pot. Just for the health of the roots and the ratio of roots to soil to water. So when I pulled this begonia out of its plastic pot, admittedly I was a little shocked that it wasn't really healthy, with like full of roots, which I assumed, and that's why I chose this size of pot. I should have used a slightly smaller pot for the begonia, but I'm pretty sure it'll be fine in that pot. For this though, I could stick it in here, but it really it's kind of tight, and it will do so much better if it's in a slightly bigger pot. So I'm going to use one of these, and I'll just transfer my little shard to. So on my website, the pots are sized by the amount of clay that went into making the pots, the amount of wet clay that went into making the pots. This is a number 1 because it was made with 1 pound of clay. And this is the method that Guy uses, which goes back to the traditional English way of making standardized flower pots. So this is a 1 pound pot, this is a 2 pound pot, this is a 4 pound pot. And Guy stamps all the pots with the numbers on them to indicate the size. So let's try this pot. Yeah, this is so much better. Much better. Ran out of soil. Need to go get some more soil. Okay. Okay, back. Now I'm noticing here that it was not centered in its plastic pot, so this is where you make the adjustment when you're repotting it. This is rosemary. Did I mention that yet? It's going to be really nice in here. And it's really nice to plant herbs in small pots like this. If you live in a small space and you don't have a garden, this serves 2 purposes, I think. This is what I do in my small apartment in New York. I plant herbs in small pots and keep them on the fire escape, which is legal, and I use them. Like I use them for cooking in the kitchen, and then every now and then, like if I'm having a party or something and I want to decorate the living room or decorate the kitchen a little bit to make it look nice, I will take the potted plants from the fire escape and put them in my apartment as though they kind of live inside, and they don't really live inside, but it just beautifies the space. And they're functional, but I think, like, look at how nice this looks. That just is, to me, perfection. It's like a classic. It's like a classic plant in a pot. So that's the rosemary all potted up. Feels much happier now. And the last thing I'm going to pot is the orchid. And now, orchids are, they're very different from these two plants. Orchids are what are called epiphytes. And an epiphyte is a plant that its roots need air to grow. So orchids, they don't grow in soil. They attach themselves to trees or rockery or hanging moss, and they will beautifully grow in their native habitat, sort of hanging in the air or hanging off of a tree. So when an orchid is planted in a pot, the goal is to simulate that. And orchid pots are commercially available. An orchid pot has holes in it. Let me go get the orchid pot that's a store-bought one. So here's a store-bought orchid pot, and this was mold made. It is a standard terracotta flower pot that just has 4 longer holes along the base. And I don't think this is that great as an orchid pot, because the purpose of the holes is to allow circulation around the roots. And the orchid pots that Guy makes in his shop are based on a traditional English orchid pot. They're much more complicated to make, and they have holes all around the pot, these round holes, which are arranged in a staggered, beautiful pattern. Again, I think that this pot is so much more beautiful than this. As I said, they're a lot more work to make, but I love making orchid pots. You take the clay out when it's at a certain level of hardness, and it's so satisfying. So this orchid is kind of it's the right size to be potted in this, because this is just a size up. The orchid, when it's being repotted, it's a very good opportunity to just go through and trim off any roots that are brown and decaying. So I'm going to just gently open this up. And there are some roots in here that look a little dead. Give it a little trim. With my orchid pot, I'll put a small shard in the bottom. Orchid grows in bark. Orchid in a pot, if you want to grow it in a pot, you don't use soil, you use what's called orchid bark. And it comes in various sizes, depending on the size of pot that you have and the kind of orchid that you're growing. So I have chosen an orchid bark that is similar in size to what this orchid was grown in. I'm just going to see. That's pretty good. There's a stake in here. Okay. I'm going to use some of the old bark, which is damp. Okay. And these roots, they want air around them. That's why there's holes in this pot. So you don't have to you shouldn't actually pack this in here. And then I'm going to lightly put bark around just to hold the orchid in place. But this is kind of the opposite of what I did before. You know, when I stuck my fingers in and really got rid of all the air pockets, in the begonia, I'm not going to do that in here because I want air to be around the roots. So I don't want it to be like this. See how flimsy that is? I don't want that. But I just want enough bark to hold it in place. Yeah, that's good. A little wobbly, but that's fine. There. The tasks this morning. Repotting these 3 plants. The orchid, the rosemary, and the begonia. I think they look fantastic. Planting a flower pot in a real clay pot. Something I encourage every plant owner to do with all their plants. Enjoy.